my dance, make it hurt.
What's up, Relentless Traders? It's your host, Surreal.
And Juan, and welcome to episode 15. 15 weeks in already, huh?
Yeah.
Um, Market had a little bit of a distribution week, I think, in my personal opinion, when it came to certain sectors. You know what I like seeing though is the separation that we've seen the past month of like sectors from the indexes, right? Versus like the indexes just kind of leading the way for the entire market.
Mm,
So like we've seen a lot of sectors really popping out, and I know you'll talk about this like, kind of closing out the indexes a little bit. Um, what I've seen the past couple of weeks is like certain sectors. Healthcare, for example, has been super strong. Energy has been picking up some steam again. And then we see distribution this week happening in tech, for example. And so it's to me it's very constructive price action to see because now we can kind of like you did close out the indexes and focus on the strength in the market.
yeah. For me, it's just been a lot of noise more recently, and I've been trying to study like my niche and to really focus. You have to really cut out a lot of noise. So it kind of made me realize once I started focusing more on one of my setups that how is getting good at following the index going to help me get better at a certain setup, and it really I've seen like other traders say like, oh, like, or Mark Minervini specifically said like, oh, you want to be like a better trader, like turn the indexes off for a year, because if we didn't have indexes, you'd still have to trade stocks, so you would just trade the strong stocks. So to me, like, seeing people on Twitter go back and forth on like, I'm trading this way or I'm trading that way, and like, I've gotten a lot of value out of Twitter and a lot of the traders on there, but like for me, like it's just become more so more recently a psychological like drain, I guess, like draining my mental capital being on there. Like, one, seeing people's P&Ls, so it's a constant highlight reel of like people who are killing it, and kind of tying it into our topic of knowing your time frame for this week. You like, I follow guys that day trade options just like you want. I follow guys that swing trade only growth stocks. I follow guys that will bottom fish and swing from lows, like, so when you're seeing constant like P&Ls, it really can F with your head and your motivation too, because it's kind of like a constant stream of like everybody's killing it. And I know that's not the reality of it, but that's how you kind of perceive it, or maybe just me specifically. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but like, it's really become more so more recently like kind of a major distraction, and I'm like, at the end of the day, all I can do is like trade what I can trade, and perform how well I can perform, and review that and get better. So right now I think I know enough to kind of trade on my own, and I really want to like seclude myself and cut myself off from a lot of stuff, because I picture myself like as like a trader, and maybe this be counterintuitive to like what other people are doing with the group. Like, I think it's really good to have a focused small group, but like I'm kind of my own person in a lot of ways, and like that's really kind of my personality, and I can kind of reach out when I need to or converse when I want to. But I feel like right now where I'm at in my trading, like I think I need to really seclude myself to a certain extent, other than our small group that we have, and just really focus on this setup right now so I can really learn. Because I want to develop the skill of finding where the money's flowing to, and not just being like, oh, look, like, like you said, like healthcare sector's hot. Like, a lot of people wait for that to show up on the scans, and I don't want to do that. Like, because by the time the sector gets hot, how many of the leaders have already made big moves? Like, for a sector to lead, stocks have to make big moves in that sector. So if you're waiting on sector strength from a screener standpoint, where like you look back and you say, "Oh man, healthcare's been ripping the past month," um, that's the people that kind of do that. I feel like might be slow. So I look at it as like, instead of me trying to focus on like, what is the index going to do next week? How is that going to help me trade my setup better? And that kind of really clicked with me. And I'm like, perfect. We'll talk about that in the topic, but
Yeah.
that was a big revelation for me this past week. Is like, dude, I'm just so tired of like seeing everyone's highlight reel, seeing people bicker back and forth about what the market's going to do, what's in play. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, what I care about is like, where are my setups and like how do I get better at finding them quicker and stocking them better and getting better at executing that? That's where I'm narrowed down more, and like it's just even more it became even more aware to me this past week, like of what I need to do. So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of excited. I'm excited to cut myself off from stuff. I deleted Twitter off. I'm gonna keep my account. Like I'll be back eventually, but I really just need to focus up these next couple months to just give it a shot and see what I can take it,
Yeah.
see what I can learn. So
Yeah.
sorry I kind of ramble there, but
No, you're good. I
just to
mean,
kind of vent and get that off my chest. I've been thinking about it this past week, and I'm like, let me just take the and I'm taking the indexes off too off my chart, so I'm not going to be looking at those at all. I'm just going to scan for my setups, try and follow them the best I can, and track that in my daily reviews. What sector I think, what stocks are setting up every day, what's looking strong, and kind of let that lead me instead of coming from the top down approach, go from a single stock approach, and just
yeah.
to try something different, try something different.
Yeah, it's very interesting to note the highlight reels on Twitter too, because like you said, a lot of the options like day traders, right? They'll like lotto or YOLO on Fridays, like 0 days to expiration calls, like and just hope for the best, 500 bucks, and then you get 100% return, and they're posting these like big P&Ls, but then you didn't see like the past month they've been losing,
Yeah. And
so
not even specifically them, even just good traders, it's like, and it's hard to not compare yourself to that too. Like, cause there's guys I admire and they're doing, they do well, and it's not that I'm hating. It's just that I put a lot of pressure and accountability on myself, and it sucks when you do a lot of work and then be like, oh, why am I not there yet? And so even though, yeah, well, realistically, man, these guys have been trading for years, and that's great. They're killing it. They show it's possible. But I think once you get to a certain point, you really got to tone back like your intake, your informational intake, because it can become very overwhelming. It's like if I'm, on the treadmill every day trying to run and get better, but like I'm not making any it's not comparable like that.
yeah,
Like work output is not directly going to show you results in this type of game, and for everybody that's going to look different. So all I can do is focus on me right now. I feel like I know enough to kind of take it from here. And so like I just want to cut things off and focus up. So and Twitter was kind of like being counterproductive for me recently.
yeah.
So yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. Like I love seeing other people win. Don't get me wrong, but
No, I
I
can,
don't know.
I mean, you and I both, same thing. If you don't mind, I guess we go into each other's weeks real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to talk about CLF. I believe this is in the like steel industry sector. Um, Honestly, that in general wasn't as important to me as to how this chart like looked on the daily. Let me switch my screen. You can kind of tell just from like, I mean, this big volume spike right here. I believe this was like last week, 324. And then it kind of went into this gap resistance. Like if you go into a weekly or a monthly chart, I think you'd have to go into a monthly chart here. You see there is this big gap here on the monthly, that it was resisting there. And I really like the look of that of it on the daily there. So this was big on my watch list into that gap resistance through 33.34, and then I took it. I mean, we'll talk about the knowing your time frame. I think my average hold time on my biggest winners is between like 5 to 8 minutes.
That's
That's
an interesting stat to keep track of.
yeah.
That you know that.
That's roughly my average hold time there. I believe this one was like 5.34 minutes. This one was like a 40% winner for me. So I was watching this thing, and this thing had big volume the day it just decided to rip. Just like right off the start. If you want to, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. I mean, you guys can just tell just from seeing this volume spike. Like, look at the average, volume, and then you have this thing start up. I was watching it through my price level at 32.61, It opened up, came and tapped it, and then just started going. I had to immediately market order into my contract because I knew this thing was gonna push and push very fast, and it did.
Mhm.
It pushed extremely fast, and like I said, we'll talk about the knowing your time frame here in a second, but I knew like I was gonna let this contract go super quick. I mean, 40% in 3 4 minutes. You can't really beat that. I'm not gonna sit here and hope that this is gonna be a 150, 200% winner.
Mhm.
It could, but one contract small. I'm gonna let it go into this extension, especially. I mean, this thing was what from open all the way to this high, 4.5% in like 10 minutes. So it ripped. It was super stress-free trade. I mean, soon as I was in, you can tell just by the green bars it went and then never came back. So, I mean, pretty good. Other than that, I'm currently in a swing for UEC, I believe it is. Um, I already let go. I did two contracts on that. I let go one of them at 20%, and then I have the other one backstopped. I think this like last one is sitting right around 30%. Um, so I'm just gonna kind of see how UEC kind of behaves going into next week. But that's kind of what we're sitting at for the week. It was a decent week. I'm here. I'm still here. So
Mm.
it's not
Hey,
it's
man.
it's not bad, right?
It's not gonna be like trade like, this is the crux of it, right? Is like, trading's not supposed to be sexy every day,
It's
it's supposed to be
not. It's not.
boring.
It's not.
You
It's not.
figure
Yeah.
out your edge and you just run it. You
Yeah.
just run it, and you review the results and then get better.
Definitely. So that's kind of it for me.
I mean, we traded a little bit of the same stuff too, because I forgot I actually took that CLF, but like it comes back around to the topic, right? Like for me on the daily, this looked like a good setup. Juan trades quicker; he's looking to secure the quicker profits, and I'm looking to play for a bigger play. It actually, looking back at it, to me, like to kind of bounce off how things look. It does have a key area right there at 3178, and it was kind of coming out of this little bit of a larger base and then kind of flagging out. So it looked good for one of my setups, a range breakout, just a flag essentially. It's kind of tightening up on that key level, and then it faded right back in. So Juan got out. He made a really good, nice trade, and that could be like a setup for you too, Juan. Like, I mean, if you're looking at these flags, like the first breakout is going to be like the most obvious play. So if you could play those for a quick move, that might be an edge for you to look at,
Yeah.
because instead of being like people like who swing trade and are looking for the bigger move, you could just be looking to scalp like these same kind of setups.
Yep.
So perfect example, because everybody clearly bought on that day, including me. I bought too. And I had a tight stop on it too. I was using, I think, the low of the day there, so it wasn't a big deal. I got out break even, so I got out with $1 actually, so I could care less. But I was definitely playing for that bigger move there because this could have easily ran higher. But no big deal. My two other trades was same thing, UEC. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Just type it in quick. Same thing. Had a nice big cup and handle here. Had a range. It stopped me out twice this week, or last week. Maybe once last week, once this week. In these wicks here, I was a little too quick. I think this day right here, I was playing off that higher low. Got stopped out. Um, and then maybe it wasn't two times. I don't. I think I only got stopped out once, and I was thinking about entering on this big wick day too, and I didn't bite on that day. Faded back in, and so that third failed breakout for me was like, okay, I really need to watch this. I kind of got long a little late here, 525, right outside the larger portion of the range. So I was a little late. I should have been watching it to take it that morning when volume still started rushing in. But I'm still in this one. I don't like the way the daily candle closed here, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a violation for me personally, because I still have my upper range. I entered at 525 and my stop is about 485 ish, I think. It's my hard stops in the system, but I think that's where I had it. So I think I'm gonna move it up a little bit and let it see if it'll test this range if we want to pull back. This shooting star can still be invalidated though. I've seen in my back test, just from what I've seen, that these shooting stars aren't a death sentence. Now, if the opening or the closing range breaks, if the low breaks, that's where it's like, okay, then we're starting to look at that range, and I'm really looking for some supportive action. If that doesn't happen, maybe I'll choke the trade off and not let it come down for my 45 stop.
Yeah.
And then Monday, you don't know. It could rip, right? This could be
Yep.
just a continuation candle. I've seen it tons of times where puts it a shooting star, may scare people, it may come down, test the low of Friday, and then continue on. So you
Yep.
don't know. It's coming out of a good base. It's a setup. I got to let it see if it'll work. If it doesn't, I have my levels, have my stop. So I'm up a little bit on that. We'll see what happens. And then I entered in KGC, a gold stock. It's got a big old wedge here, and it's fighting right with its 50 SMA now on the weekly, but it's coming out of this beautiful wedge on some decent volume. So we'll see. I eyed it up. It's not mainly my main setup, like the RBO type of setup. But I guess it kind of is because it is a range. Like when I consider RBO like a range breakout, it's essentially patterns that everybody knows, but they just have formed a really well defined range. This is just a larger RBO, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with this. Came out of a nice base, made a big move, been wedging for quite a while. So I took a shot. I really mainly because it was just really nice to manage my risk from. I think I kept the stop right under here on the daily after we started bouncing back up. So it was obvious on this day that it was going to break. So I took it on the day before the actual breakout. And then, as here, a perfect example, we could see on this day it perfectly retested the range and it's continued. So got an anchored VWAP coming up here, so we'll see. I'll probably trim a portion off into that anchored VWAP if it actually goes, and then let the rest trail. But the focus has definitely helped me, man. Focusing on my setups, going through my scans, knowing what I want to look for, planning everything out. Like I feel more disciplined, now that I have focus on my setup. So
Yeah.
feeling more, it's giving more confidence too, because I used to like care so much about like, oh, am I gonna make it in trading? Am I gonna figure it out? And like it's like now it's like I really don't care because I know if I keep going down this road, like I'm gonna keep learning. I have an edge, and that gives me comfort. Now I just need to learn how to use the edge and get really good with it. So
You
I'm
know,
like,
the way I kind of think about it, and then we can kind of tie this into knowing your time frame, is like people are traders like us who want to do this for the long term. It's kind of something that like I heard or read somewhere. I don't remember who. Maybe it's something you told me, but I have to work. I'm gonna have to work a 9 to 5 for the next 25, 30 years anyways. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? If this is gonna give me the possibility at financial freedom, and I really, this is something that I thoroughly enjoy too.
yeah,
Then like, and I have the possibility to learn this over the course of the next couple years. Like, what's the harm in it? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
I'm not like, what's the worst that can happen, that I fail and I still have to work my 30 years at a 9 to 5, you know what I'm saying? Like, I
yeah,
had to do that anyways. So so why not dedicate the next couple years to really getting everything down? Really sticking to what I want to do, and then the possibility of achieving that freedom of doing this for a living is
yeah,
there in the future. It might not be the next 2 years, might not be the next 5 years. It could be within 10, 15 years,
hmm
but the
yeah,
possibility is there.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and the time too, and keeping the time aspect. It's tough because like it depends. Like some people like you definitely handle it better than me. I don't know if it's just because I'm a little bit older or if I just I want it so bad to understand it. And I was thinking about this. I was out of town this weekend and just came back today. And I was thinking about it on the drive back, and it's like when you really want something really bad and you're just doing everything you can to get it, and it's like you're trying to grasp at it super hard and that's kind of like prevents you from getting it, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. And I'm like, man, I need to like not in a sense in a bad way, like not care, but not try and force it so much and
yeah,
just like focus on learning and like improving and not being like not focus on like where I'm at in the journey, but just focus on like every day just trying to get a little better and do what I can when I can. And that may not sound like, like other people say, like, oh, you need every waking moment on the charts and da da da. And it's like,
Yeah, no.
I love this game, and
And it's not to
some
say we're not
people,
gonna try hard, like just
yeah,
you
no,
know,
like
like
I'm not gonna act like I don't do it. Like I was just reading today. I was like took a little weekend off, but I was still like reading my book and stuff like that. One of my trading books that I've been reading. So it's like, don't get me wrong, there's tons of effort, yeah, that people have to put in. Like I will never undermine that. Like this is a tough journey, but in a sense of like just like trying to force it, like and expect, I guess expect it, like not having to expect it, and that like the results will come like over time as you
yeah,
get better. And I'm starting to see that more and more. Like, hey, like just manage your risk, focus on a good edge if you have it, and just try and get really good at that edge, and like you will get there. So that's kind of my mindset moving forward. Like focus up, get good at my edge, and just fully, I'm, as I said before, like I've been trimming the fat on like things that have been distracting me even more now, and I'm like, okay, like it's time to get down to business. What's really gonna help me get better, and
yeah.
focus on that. So
And
um
kind of to piggyback off the knowing your time
yeah.
frame, I think we spoke about this a couple times too with like you taking off the indexes and me with the like I had that snap swing last week. I have the currently UEC swing on. Um and we spoke about that knowing your time frame. So just kind of jumping into our topic here. How I know you're doing that by canceling out, the indexes and all that. Like how you're still handling your trades on a risk to reward basis, correct? This is not for
Always.
like for example, like that CLF, say you got a early enough entry, you're going like it ripped 4% right off the lows. You're not instantly selling anyways. Like you're just operating on a risk to reward basis,
Mhm.
no matter how hard it went in at that start or anything, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's gonna take time and experience, with really refining it down to like, okay, what are my warning signs, and that, because like it's hard to see. It's hard when we take the sometimes when we take the same trade, and it's like you overlap it and think like, oh, like this is the right way to do it, and that can fuck up and cross reference us. Because when you took the snap one and we were talking about it, I was like, well, what do you want to do? Because you said it was a swing, but like when you say swing, that might be different from my version of what a swing is. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? What you have to sit through. So
Yeah.
that's just a perfect example of that. And then in reverse, right? Like you took this trade and you already knew what time frame you were taking it in. You were like, oh no, 40%, like double my average gain, like I'm out, right? But I was like content with just sitting there because I'm like, even when it came back in, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't look good. Like I don't give a shit. Like I already set the stop. I already know how much money I'm gonna lose. I sized the position properly. But that's what's important, and having the conviction is like you can win either way, but the problem is if you don't have conviction and focus in what you're trying to accomplish. Because CLF was a great scalp, great play to scalp the buyers that morning, and it failed. But if you go, oh damn, like I can't let, me as a swing trader, if I let that mess up my plan and I don't follow my plan over many trades, then that hurts me. Because the next one I sell at 1.5R, where it just barely peeks its head out and it pulls a BRCC and explodes 80% in a week or two, like that's the engine behind my strategy. So I can't afford to guess which one's gonna go and which one's not. All I can do is pick the best setup and manage the risk, like you said, managing that risk to reward relationship, so I can allow my winners to pay for all the losers. So
Yeah.
having that understanding, and whatever time frame that is for you, like you have to know that and focus on that. And that could be on a trade by trade basis if you're a good trader, with multiple strategies. Like as long as you know what the plan is going in, that's good. Stick to your plan, because if you know it well, you're probably profitable over many trades. So even if one fails, it's not a big deal. Like there's nothing to get bent out of shape about. But if you're going off script, if you're trying to be a swing trader and say like, oh, I like this one. Well, now I'm going to hold it for a week and see, and then you let a triple your average gain go. Well, that's deviating from your style and your plan. And then me vice versa. If I, am I risking too much and then I take too small profits, well, that's going to kill me in the long run over many trades. So it's a perfect example,
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, it's
For
about
you,
taking that
yeah.
that all around consecutive what is it, information, right?
Mhm.
Because like you said, like if you take that, if you size fully and you take that one small like 1 hour, 1.5 hour gain, but then you're gonna take on your back end a whole bunch of losers. So, that's not gonna do anything for you. You're gonna be break
Mhm.
even or even negative
Mhm.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. And it comes down to that strategy. Like for you, like when was that point like what and I think it's all about like what you're trying to do too. Like with your strategy, we're obviously both coming into our own. So I think you're starting to understand through trial and error, like with the nuances, like what's important to you. And like we talked about that before, and it's like, what is important to you? Like what do you want out of this strategy that you're trading and what are you aiming to accomplish,
Yeah, yeah, and
within that?
definitely. And for me personally, it's very important for me to go in cash at the end
Hmm.
of the day. And if I don't have cash, I've secured profit from the trade that I'm currently in.
Hmm.
Uh, which is a big thing to say because like that snap swing, gapped up and ran really hard that morning. First 10 minutes, I think I was up 50%, and I called it a swing. Um, and yeah, I didn't define the swing properly. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
it's a swing, but it's like for me, if I get that immediate burst overnight, I mean 50% overnight, like how much more can you how much can you ask for? It's
Hmm.
one of those like one of those like greed will kill you type of things. You know what I'm saying? If my contracts are super far out, and I know on a really big time frame, this thing looks really good. Even it comes back and retests that entry. Um, the only way I want to be in a very long term swings is if I have profit secured and I can secure profit along the way in steps. That way I
Yeah.
can continually backstop and just maintain kind of like a steady position throughout the entire trade, the entirety of the trade. And that's exactly what I did with UEC. Is
That's
I entered that position, and it started ripping into the end of the day. And it's a smaller mover, it's smaller stock, but it's still just making those that 2-3% move on 20-30 cents, right?
hmm
So my contract was up 25%. I had 2 contracts, and I'm like, it's not even a question. Like, I'm selling one here, and I'm protected into an overnight gap up or gap down. Um,
hmm
and so that's exactly what happened. And the next morning, it ripped, and at my position kinda, fluctuated a little bit, but I'm still in that last contract because I'm backstopped, and my gains from my first, contract are protected.
Yeah, and I think the lesson there too, because we spoke about it after it happened. It's like one, like you realize like when you mess up on something, as long as you learn from it and can implement something in the plan, then it's like that's the feedback loop, right? That's how you get better. So like from that snap, failure, whatever what is like break even, or you still got out with a small amount, right?
Yeah, it was like 5%.
Like 5%. Yeah. Like even though so it wasn't even a loss, but out of that, like it's now already come back to you because now you're like, okay, when I go in with a single contract, like I know I can't let it, I gotta backstop it. Like,
Yeah,
regardless of if I'm trying to play for a bigger move or something. And then vice versa. Now it's like, okay, two, you also get the flip side. It's like, well, if I go in with two, then I can really implement that strategy of scaling and playing for a bigger move. So it's like it's just sometimes, you gotta take what happens and turn it into a positive. But now that shows that your plan is secured in that area.
yeah,
And how many more trades are you gonna make money now and not even have to think about it because it's just internal?
yeah,
Like if I have one contract, like I'm taking multiple of my, I'm backstopping or whatever, putting in your preventative measures of cutting out that emotional, of where price is gonna go.
definitely.
And me for vice versa, the biggest thing for me was the sizing. Like trying to force too much size on trades, and then it would make me emotional, and now I just like I find the area I really studied my pattern, and I'm like, okay, here's where I need to be looking to place stops, and then just size accordingly. And it's like, so what? I lose such a small amount of my account, but like, I've seen when I do hit a trade, like it's good amount of money to
Yeah.
cover the losers, and leaving some on to make me to work more for me. So yeah. But it's just important, I think, to stay focused and really define it. Like, don't don't be a day trader one day and a swing trader the next, and like flip flopping. Like, if you have a set strategy, know the time frame for that strategy and respect that, because that's why the strategy works.
Yep.
But once you start like letting yourself, like you said, like greed start to grab you in another direction, it's like, nah, you have a plan for a reason. That plan keeps you profitable. If you have plans that can overlap and you have the ability to use techniques such as scaling or whatever, or backstopping, then that's a different story. But you should have that plan already in place beforehand to prevent bad stuff from happening, emotional decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very important, and I think it's also super important to know, like, to even like your trading time frame too.
Oh
Like
yeah,
what
100%.
like
Yeah.
what time frame do you typically use to when you're monitoring positions or even when you're entering and exiting?
More so, I've been thinking about like my rules that are around that,
Mm-hmm.
built around that. So like, for an example, like say I enter a swing trade and I do all this work to stock a stock and or a setup, and I'm waiting for it to set up, and I'm like, okay, like it's very disciplined to sit there and see a stock that may be breaking a level and to not buy it, because you can just kind of tell like it's almost better, I'm realizing, to be more patient and wait for something to come back to see if it's going to fail or not, because then that makes the setup more highly probable if it holds, for me, at least for my setup.
Yeah.
So like having that patience, and what did you ask? I'm sorry, I was going somewhere with it, but
Your trading
with the
time frame.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so knowing, yeah, like, so daily, essentially what I was going with that is like I'm having to watch it on the daily, but like looking at the intraday kind of action, see how it's acting, and then the important part is, but for my time frame, is to know that I have to wait for the close. Maybe not to execute, but like
To see how it's
it to
shaping up for the next
yeah, to
for
see
the
how it's shaping
following.
up,
Yeah.
because of it, if it like that UEC, for example, if you look at it, like stocks have characteristics and it's very wicky. It has wicks on top.
Yeah.
So if I know that's a characteristic and I'm waiting to see if it's going to fade into close, that's something that you kind of have to know, and I have to look at the daily on that and use the 1 hour. So that's something I know. And then vice versa with a trailing mechanism, if I do all that work, this is what I was going to make the point is, if I do all that work to wait for it on a daily, and then I take it on the correct day, I get my entry right, I nail it, I get in, then I have to use that time frame to make my decision um going forward, because if I'm watching it on a 15-minute and it looks like shit and they shake me out on the 15-minute the next day, how is that gonna that totally negates all the weeks or days I had to wait for the setup on the daily to set up. And
Yeah.
then when I do all that work and I let it go and it's going and it's going and it's going, and then a perfect example I use is like trailing the 8 EMA on the daily. Say on the daily it comes down, intraday action is violating that moving average, and I sell it. And then at the end of the day, they rip it and close it above the 8 EMA. You just got shaken out.
Yeah.
That's why you got to have rules and stuff like that. But you got to make the decision off of the time frame you're trading on. Now there's some wiggle room in there, but everybody's going to be different.
Yeah.
That'd
Yeah.
be like same thing me, like asking me to ask you, or asking you to like, hey, you're scalper, like you should sell based on the daily. Same thing in reverse.
Yeah.
Like what time frames are you making your decisions on mostly? Do you
5 for the most part.
5? Yeah.
Yeah, on the 5-minute chart. I'll typically I don't chart on the 5. I go weekly, daily, 4, 3, 2, 90-minute, 1 hour, 45
Mhm.
down to the 30-minute. I want to see the look of it, and then I draw all my zones and my support resistance lines, trend lines on those time frames. But for entries and exits, 5 on the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I've learned to start putting up. I use VWAP supported resistance intraday, and then typically when something's ripping, like we've seen CLF or UEC, I'll tack on the 8 and the 20 intraday
Mm.
as well, just to see how that's kind of behaving with those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's really, you just kind of have to kind of learn that, and it's another little nuance. I mean, I'm still trying to get better at it as well, because it's very difficult to sit there and watch something moving and you're like, but experiencing over time. But if you're all over the place, yeah, that's not going to be beneficial. You're
No,
going to
it's not.
you're going to be paralyzed if you don't know what you're having to look for,
Yep.
or what
Um,
exhaustion or extension looks like in that time frame.
But like you said, those are nuances that you pick up on. Those are like little things that I've learned like in the past couple weeks,
Yeah.
And I've been watching charts ever since like October, like religiously,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? And so these are like little things. It's like, oh my God, this is super extended. It's probably gonna pull back here.
Yeah. And
Either
then within your risk to reward,
Yep,
like, is that acceptable or not? Yeah.
yeah. So it doesn't make any sense.
To sit through something.
Exactly. Yeah. But I
Totally,
think I
man.
think we can call it there for this week. Honestly, it felt a little bit on how trading should feel, unfun, right?
Yeah.
It felt very methodical, more so. I felt like every time I executed, it was just like, let me execute.
Another trade.
Yeah, it was just let me execute, and then like I know my plan going in, and I think
Yeah,
that's
I
more
want to
so
say
how I
that
want.
as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. That's more so how I wanna be trading. I just want it to be like a thing that happens, and for me to move on to the next trade and just call it.
Yeah, totally, man. Um, just it may, I don't know. It may seem kind of boring right now, but it's like the market's kind of rough too, and like as long as you just keep producing and seeing like where you can get better, and it's like that's the zone you want to be in, that methodical, unemotional execution zone, and
Definitely.
then see where your results land and try and
Uh,
get better.
for sure.
All right, man. Another week down in the books.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we continue to grind. We continue to be relentless.
Yep. All right, we'll sign off here. Remember, guys, manage your risk, stay focused, and be relentless. We'll see you next week.
See it.
See ya.